Oh Canada is an underrated gem from this year, starring some of Hollywood's most beloved new and old stars. Should you seek it out? And what are its chances now that award season is upon us? Well, stick around and I will let you know my personal opinion. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on this audio only video here on the channel. Audio only video. Say that three times fast. This audio only entry into my series here, reviewing as many movies as I can with A List in 1 year. I'm having a few issues with my webcam that I hope to resolve pretty soon, but I did not want that to keep me from discussing a movie with you here today. O Canada is the latest film from director and screenwriter Paul Schrader, one of the most consistent auteurs working in the industry today. The film stars Richard Gere as Leo Fife, a terminally ill documentary filmmaker being interviewed about his life by a former student named Malcolm, played by the delightful Michael Imperioli of Sopranos fame. Uma Thurman is also present as Leo's wife and former student Emma. Jacob Elordi also stars as the younger version of Leo in several flashback sequences as the film cuts between the present day Leo being interviewed and dramatizations of his checkered past, played again by Jacob Elordi in those sequences. Um, this film was very good and well worth watching if you are a hungry viewer, as far as, nice adult oriented character dramas go. There are many criticisms of modern day Hollywood that these kinds of movies don't get made anymore. And this is the kind of movie that those critics are talking about. I'll cut right to the chase and let you know right away this movie is good and worth your time. I know the premise had me worried at first, as movies about people who make movies need to ride a fine line and oftentimes risk being too up their own butts, for lack of a better term. So when I heard that this was about a documentary filmmaker, um, I was a little concerned, but it is heavily about the man himself. It's not really about the art of documentary. I keep saying it wrong. Of documentary filmmaking. It's not about the nuts and bolts of that necessarily. It becomes clear very quickly into the movie that this film is really, really about Leo Fife, this character played by Richard Gere and Jacob Elordi. It's about this guy whose life is, without going into too many spoilers, plagued by guilt, uh, cowardice, deception, all sorts of, complicated feelings that are missing in many mainstream films today. Gere plays the regret of this man so well throughout the various sequences of film that roll out more and more of his backstory. It's a very methodical, slow kind of reveal as to what his whole deal is. I'm a little frustrated, I'll be honest, that no discussions I've heard about the best actor race this year have really included Richard Gere's name in this movie. I understand that there is a big slate of great performances to consider this year from actors like Coleman Domingo or Ralph Fiennes. While I don't know that I have a personal favorite in the race as of right now, Oh Canada left me wondering why Gere is being left off of so many shortlists. Elordi, as the younger Leo, is also quite good. He, I'm not sure, rises to the level of also deserving to be in awards consideration for this role specifically. But as far as Euphoria alumni go, I think he gives Zendaya a run for her money as far as like most interesting film careers. Um, I was going to say post Euphoria, but my understanding is that that show is still sort of on the air between seasons. I don't know what's really going on there. Someone will have to let me know in the comments or in my personal life who is a Euphoria fan. I've never watched that show. But I know that Elordi did those Kissing Booth movies that I never really finished. I only saw the first two. I never got around to the third one. So those weren't great, and I didn't think he came off great in them. Now, though, he has picked many interesting filmmakers to collaborate with. Emerald Fennell, Sofia Coppola, Paul Schrader here in this film, and next year he is going to be collaborating with Guillermo del Toro. And I don't know if an Oscar nomination for Elordi will happen within the next, say, 2 to 3 years, but I could easily see Elordi clutching a nomination or two by the end of the 2020s for sure. I think he has the sauce, as the kids say, and many respected filmmakers continue to seem to be drawn to him. So his star is definitely going to only continue to rise. As far as Paul Schrader films go, this film, O Canada, is as bleak and conflicted as some of his most iconic works and most recent works, but maybe not to the degree of intensity that more mainstream audiences have come to expect within the last few years. I'll try to explain that as best I can. I feel like in the last 10 years or so, really only since 2017, Schrader basically made this masterpiece trilogy of sister films that weren't literally connected but felt very similar in terms of tone and attitude. I'm talking, of course, about First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke, The Card Counter, starring Oscar Isaac, and Master Gardener, starring Joel Edgerton. While O Canada definitely contains some thematic similarities, guilt, shame, disillusionment with the world, etc. I think that the aforementioned trilogy hits those ideas with much more percussive force, if that makes sense. Those films are all drawing very stark, contrasting ideas just from the log lines alone, right? A preacher becomes a climate, let's say, activist, for lack of a better term, or a Guantanamo Bay interrogator becomes a poker player, or a former white nationalist, in the case of Master Gardener, becomes the gardener of an historic estate, tries to turn over a new leaf. Those are all very strong ideas that grab and hold your attention from the jump. And each of those premises eventually kind of creeps into violent or almost violent territory. O Canada, on the other hand, is not that kind of movie. And so I'm wondering if maybe it'll alienate younger Schrader fans, if that makes sense, who are recent additions to his fan base, um, due to films like First Reformed, which has kind of a big cult following, and The Card Counter, which also has a cult following. Master Gardener, I'm not quite sure was as widely well received, but I personally found it to be very good. O Canada is about, conversely, and spoilers at this point, by the way, just, I feel like I need to spoil a little bit in order to make this point here. O Canada is about a draft dodger who basically stumbles his way into becoming a professor and then a documentarian. So there really isn't any opportunity for violence or the threat of violence as there are in some of those other films. So there's no bubbling up of any sort of threat in that way. It's more about the dramatic threat of what information is going to be revealed or not revealed throughout the course of the runtime. And I personally found the movie to remain engaging, but I could see how someone might be looking for a little bit more edge as far as on screen action goes. I hope that criticism, or not criticism, but I hope that articulation makes sense. I would, I guess, caution somebody to factor that information into their decision whether or not to watch the film as it relates to their personal taste. That's all I'm really trying to say there. So, where does this rank on my scale of A list, A amazing, A bridge, A abysmal, or needs to be A boarded? Again, I reserve the right to change those as time goes on. I think realistically, this would land somewhere between average and amazing. If I had to choose one lane for the sake of ease, I would go with amazing. I think this movie is emotionally mature, the vibes are effective, the performances are great, and more about it really worked for me than didn't. Um, and I should quickly shout out while I'm talking about how good the performances are in that last sentence. Uma Thurman is very good, and Michael Imperioli is very good. Both actors who I really enjoy and that I think are very solid here. I felt a little bit guilty that I only really focused on Richard Gere and Jacob Elordi, but it was nice to see the faces of Thurman and Imperioli, who I feel like I don't see in many theatrically released films nowadays. It's possible that they're on various streaming originals that I'm just not quite familiar with because I don't watch a whole lot of TV compared to movies. I know Michael Imperioli, for example, was in the last season of The White Lotus or one season of The White Lotus, whichever one was The Aubrey Plaza one, I'm not sure if they ever intersected or not, but I remember that being kind of a conversation because some people were now recognizing him for that rather than The Sopranos, which is just bonkers to me. But that's neither here nor there. I also saw this film as part of an experiment where I am trying to see as many films as possible in one year with AMC A List. This movie was not showing in premium formats, as shocking as that might sound. And I saw it at a matinee screening, so my savings came out to a mere $9.69. Nice. Um, I have saved almost twice that on tickets before with A List, going into IMAX or Dolby theaters, but I can't say I'm unhappy with this specific deal. There are sometimes movies I see in premium formats that I then wish I could pay $20 out of pocket to unsee. So it all comes out in the wash as far as I am concerned. I won't name names on those movies. Craven the Hunter comes to mind, though, for some reason. But anyways, thank you very much for joining me. Please let me know in the comments if you saw this movie, though I don't know many people who did, so I might be in the minority here. Alternatively, tell me who your favorite lead actor or lead actress is in 2024. I'm very curious to know. We are quickly approaching Oscar season, so that race is heating up fast, and I would love to know opinions. But thank you very much for listening. In this case, I'll be back with a webcam as soon as I can. But until then, check back in here periodically for reviews on the latest movies that are in theaters. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful new year if you don't see me until then.